Hey, back again. No sound so far. Let's see. Can you hear me? Is your mute light blinking on the microphone? Are you muted on the button down here? Haha!
Okay, how are we now?
That's great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Defaulting to muted is dangerous.
I can't really hear you if you're talking.
Oh, let's see. Am I soft or can you not hear me at all? Let's see. Hello, David Taylor.
There's Michael.
Hi.
Hey, Michael. Can you guys hear me? Am I not getting any sound?
I can hear you.
Okay. Michael, can you hear me?
Are we no audio?
Touchdown.
I can bring my...
Just a minute.
Donald, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Are you not hearing me?
Huh, I can't hear you. Let me take the microphone I'm using out.
I hear you just fine.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
I can hear
Yeah.
you.
So I can hear you. I'm just gonna abandon this microphone, Donald.
Okay.
Yeah, it's too dangerous.
Hey,
Hey, you look so fancy, Jennifer White. Oh, it's not hearing you.
There you go. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Jennifer White joining.
can you hear me now, Regina?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Excuse my technology problems.
Always when you're working on teaching technology and talking about it, it's got to be a good
Exactly.
story.
I like talking about it, but I don't know how it works. So.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, your phone is facing upwards, so we're seeing your light instead of your face. If you could lean it down, there you go.
Is that better?
Even more than that.
Hold on.
There's Ruby.
Hello, Ruby.
Ruby,
Hi, everyone.
Cool.
good to see you.
Good to
And
see you.
David Taylor, Gina tells wild stories about you. I'm glad to meet you.
Don't scare him that I told wild stories.
He tells good stories about all of us. As you know.
It was nice to meet. I met David yesterday on the phone, and we had a really good conversation.
That's
You
great.
see me?
And
How-
Michael, it's
That's
good to
great.
finally see you, Michael.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Virtually, but I can't wait to see you in person.
People say that and then they're let down. So just keep it the way.
No,
it is.
That's not true. That's not.
There's not a chance.
And then I want to introduce you to my very good friend Ruby Moore here, who's an expert in all things in life.
Yes. You just
Talk
mentioned me.
about an introduction that'll lead to people being let down.
Oh, cool.
Uh,
Am I better than the ceiling though? Does it look all right
You look
now?
great.
Oh, yeah, you look
look
great.
great.
Man. You look great. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. No,
The whole virtual world thing, right?
yeah. You know, a learning curve for everybody.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
now, Ruby, you met Jennifer in Oregon one time, right?
Yeah, we've definitely met, and yep, you're one of my heroes.
Oh, right back at you, sister.
Wow.
Your reputation, I'm telling you, everybody you talk to is like, oh, you got to meet Ruby Moore. She's like, the mover and shaker of the, really, I want to mentor with you. Can we just figure that out somehow?
Take it to the bank. That's what I'll say before she pulls it back. But Jennifer is one of my favorite people too, Ruby. I call her Patch Adams because people respond to her in a very unusual way wherever she goes.
And just so you all know, as a group, I call her Amal
This
because
is inappropriate.
so we call her Amal. So please start doing that. Hi, Lisa.
Yeah,
Hey,
no,
Lisa.
my feminist nature is offended by this even as I say it, but I always tell people that I'm in love with her big brain, but she really is a glamour plus toe.
Hey, you know, I think feminism is to include every part of who we are. So I think you nailed it on the head. No political nothing. That's exactly right. And you nailed her. That's exactly
This is why there should not be video, just audio. You know, I have a face for radio. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Good, good. I see everybody's,
Are you ready to jam?
yeah.
I was saying to Gina, it's too bad that they didn't, you know, tape our original riff,
I know.
because it was just, you know, clicking and, you know, perfect. It was perfect.
So much fun.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like that now too, though, because that's the stuff we say in our sleep, right? It's what we know the best. So I think it's going to be, I'm looking forward to this conversation with you all. And you know, Gina, this is how I described her to Michael before they met, is, you know, Gina's going to she's the consummate lawyer. She's going to make sure that she's going to draw out exactly what she needs from all of
The
us.
deposition, really.
No stress, right?
Right.
Michael, you know I'm kidding, right? Not a
Right.
deposition.
Right.
More
Michael,
like a coffee talk. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Hi, Tia.
Hi there.
How are you? It was good to chat with you yesterday, Tia.
Thanks. It was good to talk with you.
Hi, honey.
Hey, stranger, how are you?
Hey, Michael.
So Tia, I haven't met you yet, but I hear really good things from Michael and from Gina and from Ruby. I'm Jennifer White.
Oh, nice to meet you.
You too.
You are in for a treat.
I feel that way about all of you. This is like getting the garage band back together. You know, this is fun.
Gina, you're one of the people that can call, and before you open your mouth, you can say, "Can you?" And the answer is yes before you finish it. And all of us feel that way about you, of course, right?
But you need to be careful with me because you don't know what I'm going to ask you.
Well, I have a nephew that I've learned something from. He's so adorable, but when he wants something, he sort of mumbles it quietly, and then if you say what he said, you say, "Oh, you want to go for a walk?" And he'll go, "Oh, okay." Like somehow you
Like
got a
you
great
proposed
idea.
The best art of persuasion is that you think it's your idea, right?
That's right. That's right.
So just because you asked doesn't mean we have to accept.
That's right. Yeah, you're
Now
getting it.
that's
You're getting it.
self-advocacy. That is advocacy at its best right there. Way to go, Tia.
You said it all right there. Exactly.
She taught my adolescent daughter self-advocacy skills when she first met her. I was like, oh my God, how did I let this happen?
Yeah. One of the
I like
best.
you already, Tia. I like you already. Hey, David, I just haven't gotten to meet you yet, so I just wanted to make sure I got to say hello, and then we got to hear back from you if you'd unmute yourself, and there you go.
You're out there in Michigan, David. What's going on today?
The usual.
The usual, whatever that is. I just think anything is usual.
I think you all are debating the whether guns are appropriate to carry in your capital. I heard on the news today.
Wow.
It's a bunch of just.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
it's something that our governor inspired that question. Go ahead, David.
I'm just counting down to move to Arizona.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
So
You're thinking about the heat? You'd rather be in a warm place?
yeah, I'm tired of the cold weather. I just want to do something different.
Yeah.
What's the temperature like in Michigan right now?
It depends. So we get all 4 seasons in one day.
Wow.
Yeah, where I'm in Wisconsin, and on Monday it was sunny, and then it was raining, and then it was snowing, and then it was sunny.
Snowing. Oh my gosh.
That sounds
No,
about
we had
right
snow.
in Michigan. That's how
Yep,
Michigan
same.
is.
Yeah, right next door.
That's how we describe Seattle too. Like keep a suitcase in your car with a change for every season, because you could have all 4 in one day. It was 87 in Seattle on Saturday. 87.
What? Oh
in
my
May.
gosh. It's
Crazy.
colder in DC. Yeah.
And now
Wow.
it's cold and windy. I mean, now it's
Yeah.
cold. It's 57. So good luck.
And Maryland is supposed to be in the 80s starting Friday.
Oh, wow.
And then
Really?
the next week is supposed to be in the 80s.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You live there now, not Chicago. I thought, yeah. So you're gonna have to take me you're gonna have to go show me DC. What I mean, I only seen the White House. I know that sounds terrible to say that, but what are the other things?
So I'm sorry, can I take just a minute before we begin to make sure I've had to write really brief bios for everybody to do introductions and not take 20 minutes. Can I just check them all out, run them all by you, make sure I got them right?
It's Ruby's bio that takes about an hour.
Page 15.
Yeah, it has tabs on it. Go ahead, Donald.
Tina Klein is a partner at the law firm Brown, Goldstein, and Levy. Prior to that, she was senior counsel at the Office of the Attorney General for Civil Rights at the United States Department of Justice.
Sure.
Lisa Mills is a senior technical advisor for the Coalition to Promote Self-Determination and a senior consultant with Mark Gold and Associates. Yes?
Yep.
Ruby Moore is the executive director of the Georgia Advocacy Office, the Protection and Advocacy Association for the state of Georgia, and she is the president of the board of directors of TASH.
Yep.
Tia Nellis is the director of policy and advocacy at TASH. Michael, I didn't know what your job title was. I just have Michael Rogers is fill in the blank with the Washington.
Superman, pretty much.
There we go. I work for the Division of Development Disabilities in Washington State.
Just a minute, is
The Division for Developmental Disabilities in
Administration.
It's actually now called the Developmental Disabilities Administration.
Administration.
They changed the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Administration.
But you're also a very active self-advocate in
Oh,
Washington.
yeah. I've done that a couple of times, yes.
so I'm sorry, the developmental disabilities, what is it named now?
It's Developmental Disabilities Administration.
Administration.
For the state of Washington.
Yeah.
And if I could suggest that you add to Tia's resume, one of the founders and the first
Yes.
co-chair of Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered. Whoop, whoop.
Yay.
Can you please say whoop whoop after it too?
Oh, whoop, whoop, Tia.
Yes.
Come on.
I mean,
Hey, Donald. Hey,
this is
Donald,
heavy
you should,
lifting, my dear. Heavy lifting.
I'm sorry, founder and first president?
co-president.
First co-president.
Cool.
can you remove from me the senior technical advisor? That's a past role.
Okay.
I think that was at the bottom of my bio. So just say consultant on employment first and the MG&A thing.
Which Mark Golden Associates.
Yeah.
I just say guru,
But-
maybe.
But
No.
yeah, an advocate outside of work too.
And you have mine
It's not a
dates.
job; it's a profession.
I think we didn't do mine yet. I just want to make sure before we start you've got some.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Let's see. David Taylor is a motivational speaker, trainer, and consultant for a wide variety of disability organizations in Michigan and throughout the United States, including being a member of the board of directors of TASH.
Wow.
Hey, Donald.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming we're going to be muted, right, when we're not speaking. So
No, it's going to be open mics. David, can I?
Ooh.
Right quick,
Okay.
can you on there, can you add, I also help train people I also help train people that receive service on self-determination.
Okay.
Okay.
And Michael, because we're all speakers, our mics are going to be live, picking up whatever you say, unless you click them off.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay,
Thank you.
and then
Yeah.
in the last 15 minutes or so, we're going to open other people's mics, I think, right, Donald?
Participants will pose questions via the Q&A text.
So in the chat,
They won't be, yeah.
Excellent, okay. And then will they have the chat box while we're talking?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how to do two things at once anyway, but okay.
Okay. And I will keep an eye on those two boxes. And then
Okay.
the last one is, I have Jennifer White works with community employment agencies on employment first strategy and transition.
I'm also the CEO of Able Opportunities.
Okay,
And
Jennifer White.
And I'm a national subject matter expert.
Is the
That's
CEO
right.
of, I'm sorry, is the CEO of
Able Opportunities Incorporated.
Her own baby.
And Lisa, if there's any chance you can tilt your screen down just a little bit to the light on your ceiling, yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. All the Zoom, stress everybody's feeling, that will help us. Thank you. Even better.
I thought you made her quit, Jennifer.
Sorry, Lisa, come back. Oh, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate
She
that.
even came back. Okay, thank God.
I'm going home. I'm going home. No, wait, I'm home. I can't go home.
It was a short webinar.
Okay, so let's see. We are. It is time, so I'm going to start broadcasting in just a second, and then we'll be live in front of like 125 people. So, are we ready?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Here we go. Hello and welcome everybody.
Welcome and welcome everybody, Pirk.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm sorry, Kama, what was that question mark?
That's the captioner.
Captioner, we've got, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, you just muted yourself, Captioner. Sorry, thank you. Welcome everyone. It is now 1 o'clock Eastern, time to begin. I am Donald Taylor and I'm responsible for special projects at TASH. Welcome to today's roundtable discussion, Disability Employment During and After COVID-19, Making the Post-Pandemic Future of Work Inclusive. With our panel of discussants, Gina Klein, Lisa Mills, Ruby Moore, Tia Nellis, Michael Rogers, David Taylor, and Jennifer White. This is the fourth of our webinars in responding to the COVID-19 crisis. Recordings of previous webinars are available on our website at tash.org. Just click on the COVID-19 response and resources banner. We have part 2 of Safeguards, Unprecedented Times and Advocacy coming up on May 22nd, and more on the way. Check the TASH in Action newsletter and TASH social media for details and registration. For attendees who don't know us, TASH is a values and research-based advocacy association with an over 40-year history of advocating for the rights of people with disabilities. We are located in Washington, D.C. with local chapters in 18 states. Originally founded in 1975 by university researchers, we quickly expanded to include family members, self-advocates, teachers, service providers, and others dedicated to the cause of ensuring that people with disabilities are able to participate in all aspects of community life. In addition to webinars such as this, we offer a scholarly quarterly journal, Research and Practice for Persons with Severe Disabilities, a membership magazine, Connections, a monthly email newsletter, TASH in Action, a podcast, our chapters and issue-based communities, our annual Outstanding Leadership in Disability Law Symposium and Awards Dinner, this year honoring Judy Gran on October 7th, and our annual conference to be held this year in Baltimore, Maryland on December 3rd through 5th. You can learn more about TASH, including becoming a member or attending our annual conference at tash.org. So a little bit about using Zoom and today's roundtable. Our presenters will speak for about an hour and 45 minutes, and then there'll be 15 or 20 minutes at the end for questions and answers. To use Zoom, please notice that if you move your mouse cursor over the Zoom window, a menu will slide up from the bottom, and there are a couple of controls you can use. The first is all the way to your left. You will see a microphone icon. You can use the arrow next to the microphone to adjust your individual volume. The second button of interest is the chat button. It's towards the center of your screen. I will be monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar. If you're having any difficulties or have a question, you can put it there and I will take care of it. If you're in need of captioning, captioning is available through a separate browser window. The link to the captioning is in the chat box. And then finally, for the question and answer session at the end, Zoom has, in addition to the chat box, a separate Q&A box. We will be using the Q&A box for questions and answers. If you pose your questions there, I will read them out loud for participants for our panelists to answer. But I'll also be paying attention to the chat box. If you put your question there, I'll read it out loud from there as well. Today, we're excited to have Gina Klein, Lisa Mills, Ruby Moore, Tia Nellis, Michael Rogers. I'm sorry, yes?
Sorry, but we have a request for a link to the captioner.
Let's see. The link it's 2 comments up from your question. I'll paste it in here again. There's the captioning. Anyway, so our panelists today. Gina Klein is a partner with the law firm of Brown, Goldstein, and Levy. Prior to that, she was senior counsel at the Office of the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the United States Department of Justice. Lisa Mills is a consultant on Employment First with Mark Gold and Associates. Ruby Moore is the executive director of the Georgia Advocacy Office, the protection and advocacy organization for the state of Georgia, and she is the president of the board of directors of TASH. Tia Nellis is the director of policy and advocacy at TASH and the founder and first co-president of Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered. Michael Rogers works for the Developmental Disabilities Estate Administration for the state of Washington. David Taylor is a motivational speaker, trainer for people on self-determination, and consultant for a wide variety of disability organizations in Michigan and throughout the United States, including being a member of the TASH Board of Directors. Jennifer White is the CEO of Able Opportunities and a national subject matter expert who works with community employment agencies on employment first strategies and transition. Please join me in welcoming Gina, Lisa, Ruby, Tia, Michael, David, and Jennifer.
Thank you, Donald, for such a nice introduction, and thank you to TASH for having this great group of people. I am so humbled to be able to moderate a discussion. I'll warn the audience that this group really likes each other and really likes talking disability employment. So this should be a fun conversation and one that flows pretty easily. We've got 3 of the nation's most, readily recognized subject matter experts on the issue of disability employment. And we also have national leaders in the self-advocacy movement. It's such a wonderful composition for a panel to discuss what's going on right now during the COVID-19 crisis. There's sort of no other way to put it other than a crisis. But since the passage of the ADA in 30 years, we've made enormous progress on disability employment in the United States. So many of my friends who are on this panel with me here would agree that we have come to know what accommodations, technologies, and supports work best for people with disabilities to not only be employed, but to advance in careers successfully in a range of jobs. nevertheless, we have experienced very high unemployment for the disability population in good times and in bad, in good economic times and in bad. And there have been systemic barriers in place that have been in place for decades. And now more than ever, however, there's a question about the labor force participation of people with disabilities. The country in general went from a very low unemployment rate to an astronomical unemployment rate in a very short period of time in the last several weeks and months. We have 20 to 22 million people who lost their jobs in April in the United States. And people with disabilities in particular remain vastly underrepresented in the jobs that were most expanding prior to this crisis, this pandemic, and overrepresented in the jobs that are contracting, either manual skills jobs, jobs that are in retail and service sector industries. And there is an open question for us all about the deepening inequality that might be happening right now, today, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There is also a very real question about what will happen to work for everyone, whether certain industries will come back at all, whether other industries will be reinvented. But we now face epic levels of unemployment that are brought about in a relatively short period of time. And the stress of the situation is not yet fully known or felt. What will it mean for long-term unemployment? As my friends on this panel remind me to say to you at the top here, we don't know what we don't know yet. However, it's incumbent upon us to discuss and decide if we will continue to seek progress as it relates to the employment of people with disabilities right now, not later. It's incumbent upon us, as this panel will discuss, whether to preserve job gains right now, not later, whether to preserve employment supports, services and supports, accommodations, supported employment right now, not later. And this is all subject to discussion today, and I just can't wait. So I want to start by talking to my old friend Ruby Moore over there. Ruby, the first subject that this group has decided when we got together is to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on potential unnecessary institutionalization. The concept more specifically, we've been through several stimulus packages. We've been through the CARES Act, which was passed in late March, I believe. There are some innovations in there in the sense that there is the use of Medicaid funding to allow direct support professionals to assist people in the hospital. It's a truly important function of the Medicaid programs. There has been a lot of discussion. You have been on the front lines there, Ruby, and you could talk about it in working to prevent medical rationing that has adverse impacts on and very significant health consequences to the disability community. And the work has been incredible and admirable, and I'm happy for you to talk about that. But simply put, there is, putting that issue aside for a moment, Ruby, there's another issue, which is that if you get sick and you end up in an institutionalized setting, a nursing home, a psychiatric hospital, unnecessarily, and you can't shelter at home anymore, you're at potential risk of serious health consequences, if not death. To what extent do you view economic participation as health? And what I mean by that, Ruby, is to be able to sustain people's participation in work right now may actually save someone's life. Is that an overstatement?
No, I don't think so at all. Let me just start off by saying that because this is a TASH event, that I feel pretty comfortable saying we all know that everybody has gifts and talents, okay? That's not a question on the table. And as human beings, we have a universal experience of wanting to make a contribution. We know everybody has a contribution to make. Sometimes when we look at what's going on around us, it sort of feels like there's an acknowledgement for some people and not so much for others. But research shows us that we're healthier. This is a public health question on many levels. So I'll just talk briefly about it because my colleagues also have a million things to say about this and other things. But research says we're healthier, whether it's mental health, physical health, as well as our economic well-being when we're working. We have a reason to get up. We have a reason to move our bodies. We have something to look forward to. We have what some of us would call a work order day. And I think that, not to mention connection with other people, as a P&A director, as a protection and advocacy director, I know that one of the most potent safeguards against people being abused or neglected or set apart from us is the presence of people in their lives who aren't paid to be there. And work's a great way for that to happen, for people to have that sense of identification and an acknowledgement of what people have to contribute. So I think now with COVID-19, there's a heightened awareness on everybody's part of what it means when you don't have that. When you're not working, when you don't have a work order day, and how you're literally you can be less healthy. And I think people are also very worried about being safe. People are worried about being safe now, realistically. And I'm not quite ready to say it's a silver lining, but it's something like that. I feel like the veil has been lifted on a truth that many of us have embraced for a long time, which is congregating and segregating people is not a healthy thing to do. It's not good for anybody involved. And at this point, people really know that congregation is, literally now hazardous to your health. So knowing that makes employment an urgent public health consideration, because it's literally part of the remedy. When people aren't working with disabilities, they tend to be more vulnerable to being sent to congregated places. Because people have been home, by the time this is over, it will be somewhere from 3 to we don't know how many months. But people have not been going to those segregated settings. And I think that we have an opportunity here to kind of rethink some of our old practices that were never healthy and now are hazardous to our health. To say, okay, we have a greater understanding of there's a remedy available to all of us that makes more sense for our mental health, our physical health, and our economic well-being, and that's working. So I would just say sort of the call to action. TASH always has a call to action. The call to action right now is, since we're home, then what are we doing if we have a job to keep our job, or if we're supporting somebody to keep a job? And if we're not employed, or we're supporting people who are not employed, what are we doing to help them get into a pathway to employment, helping people to figure out what they want to do? Everybody does have gifts and talents, and if you're hanging around together day after day, there's all kinds of opportunities to figure out what those gifts and talents are, what those interests are. We could do, now that we're using video for everything, video resumes. You have plenty of time to practice trying different things and figuring out ways for people to express who we are, and that we have something of value to contribute. And I just want to say one last thing on this topic quickly. Gina, you started off talking about the stimulus packages. And, Lisa Mills could probably do 4 hours on this topic. So I'm not going to say too much about it. Dr. Mills, you want to jump in there and talk about it, you can. But I do want to say that in this period of COVID-19, it's becoming more clear that our culture has to sort of take a stand on, are we just going to say some people count and some people don't? And whether or not we're assisting people to be part of the economic mainstream and employment is a piece of that question. Whether or not people get sent back to congregated places is a question. And I've been a little discouraged, actually a lot more than a little discouraged, that the stimulus packages have not really been very inclusive of people with disabilities. And so again, part of the the solution really is employment, because if you're an employee or you're an employer or you're a business owner, if you're perceived as part of that group, then you're in line to receive community development monies. You're in line to benefit from the stimulus packages. You're in line for whatever the government may come out with to say, let's make sure people, you know, maintain their employment and their economic well-being. But if you're not employed, you're not in that at all. And so again, we have this powerful, powerful tool. We have many decades of research and demonstration on what people are capable of in terms of employment and careers if we give people a chance. So I want to stand side by side with people, other people with disabilities, and to say, let's make sure we're all counted. Let's make sure we're all included. And for the broader population of people who haven't thought of employment as a crucial public health issue, today's the day to join in the conversation with us.
That's great, Ruby. And Tia, Ruby just said something I want to ask you about, which is very interesting. Tia, you're a leader, a national leader in the self-advocacy movement, a founder of self-advocacy organizations, a leader at TASH, and you sort of without pause started having weekly meetups during this crisis. I wondered if you could talk about that and talk about the experiences that people are reporting to you about employment.
So we started a coffee break on Fridays at 3 to 4 Eastern time. And people, self-advocates get on the phone with supports if they need to. And we talk about many different things. And a lot of the things that come up is being a part of the community, and what do we do now that nobody can go outside and people are very lonely and upset about that. For people who go to sheltered workshops, they don't go to sheltered workshops right now. People who did have jobs, some of them still have their job, which are very, very lucky. But some of people don't have a job anymore. And what are people doing? So that's one of the reasons we started the coffee breaks, is to bring people together and to make sure that they had a voice and to be able to check on each other and support each other. And a lot of people are giving resources on what to do during this time, how to find a grocery store that has things that you might need, maybe going to a smaller, different store, or going to a convenience store. Now 7-Elevens are starting to deliver. If they can maybe find that what they need in a different store. Different resources of what people can do during the day now that they're at home, and trying to find things to do and keep active. A lot of the places now have gotten computers for people with disabilities to share. Their agencies have done that. But still there's a lot of people with disabilities that don't have that, even that access, computer access, to be able to join people. But I think that during the coffee break, we have talked a lot about employment, and people are not having jobs right now and are looking for jobs and want jobs. I just want to say that think about the first time that you ever had a job, and how proud and what happiness it brought to you. And you moved on from a job to a career, and what pride and happiness that it brought to you. Now think about the people that you serve or you work with or that you employ. Everybody deserves that chance and that opportunity to feel that same pride and happiness in their life. So when we're doing this and we're locked down, there's many different things that you can do. We have to think outside the box and be creative. We can still do some employment things. We could do some work stuff. We can do, hey, we're talking about virtual videotaping resumes, teaching somebody how to write a resume, how to do a video resume. You can do that instead of sitting around doing nothing. Teaching somebody to have self-advocacy skills online. doing self-advocacy online, talking about leadership, talking about jobs, why it's important to have a job, teaching somebody how to interview. How do you do an interview for a job? What do I wear? How do I act? What questions do I answer? There's many things that we can do. So if we can all just remember to think outside of the box and to remember that people with disabilities want to be out there and be a part of the community and work just like everybody else.
Thank you, Tia. And you know, you raised an issue that Lisa Mills, I should say Dr. Mills, knows quite a bit about. You know, you're talking about flexible services and ways for people to reach into your home and provide services that ordinarily would be provided face-to-face in the community, whether it be supported employment, other customized employment strategies. Lisa, what do we know about what's going on in the field in terms of whether those services are reimbursable through Medicaid and state systems?
So we had I guess it's not uncommon, because when we think about the American workforce, people with disabilities are often overlooked and forgotten as an essential part of that workforce. And what I see in our services is that the emphasis on keeping people connected to employment services is also getting lost in this crisis. And while states, I think, are asking and getting really broad flexibility to do whatever it takes, that doesn't mean they're implementing all of those flexibilities that they've asked for and gotten. They're still selecting things, and guidance is coming out slowly. So we started out with federal guidance that only talked about the ability to do personal care remotely, and then didn't say anything about the full range of other services that could have also been and should have also been available remotely. Then we saw guidance coming out saying, well, day services, which are services that do not focus on employment, can be done in the home. But then there was no silence about employment services and support employment. As Tia said and Ruby said, there are so many things that we can focus on that are good quality and necessary employment services. People need to be able to stay connected to anyone who supports them with employment. They're having changes in income that might mean I need to connect with a benefits counselor. They need to keep in touch with their employer to find out when might I go back to work and what might be the rules when I go back to work. I don't even think a lot of funders of services know what people's employment status is right now. And interestingly, while the naysayers around employment first may want to say, oh, the sky is falling and we're back to square one with nobody working, why are we bothering? We, in one state, we mandated that supported employment providers would help people check in with their employers on a monthly basis and know where they are at. And we found initially 95% are expected to return to work when their coworkers do. We need to care and pay attention and give people the supports they need to make sure we keep as many people in that category going back to work. So we have seen some states that have stepped out and said, you can provide supported employment remotely. You can do all the things they're talking about. There are a whole range of things that people need help with during this crisis. And they've put the systems in place for providers to do that, and it's happening. And those are the places where we know whether people are likely to go back to work, and we can start getting them redirected if we think that's not going to happen. But you know, it has been slow, and employment is always an afterthought instead of a first thought. And I would argue that every other citizen in this country, one of the things they are thinking about every day is when and if I'm going back to work. So why would we have any different expectations for people with disabilities?
Thank you, Lisa. And you know, it makes me want to ask David a question. David, you are not only a TASH board member, you created your own business you wear many hats, I think, in your life. But one thing you told me is about your peer mentor support that you provide to other people, and that you have been providing to other people peer mentoring during this crisis. Could you explain a little bit about those services and how valuable they've been?
Yeah, so do you want me to give you a history, or you want me to just make it small? Can't hear you. Can't
You're
hear you.
muted, Gina.
Sorry, little technical difficulty. Anything you'd like to share, David?
So about I think 10 years ago, Michigan DD Council started to look at how to help people with intellectual development disabilities on how to give services to people like for peer support specialists. And one of the things that we looked at is how to get the people who go through the service providers and go through services to get trained. And one of the things came out is to create a format. And one of the things was created was peer mentoring. And actually, the way it happened, we also communicated with some people from Georgia, actually, to show us how to do the trainings and everything else. And we created our part of ours in Michigan, but we got some help from Georgia in that type of formation. And we put it in our, so in the Medicaid guidebook, and for us, we put a couple things in there to help us to do the service, but also get paid by the code that we use. It's the H4600 code. That's for the peer mentoring service for us. And once you become certified from the state, so we have CMHs here, community mental health PISPs that provide the service for our state, and each county has it. So one of the things happened for the county I live in is we decided in Oakland, to hire peer mentors who used to get services and still get services, but also who can help navigate through the system, who've been through the services, who knows how to help the other peers. And so one of the things that I did, I decided to work for the agency that I receive services from, and to provide a service to help other peers that I probably went through like difficult changes in my life and everything else, to help them to just to be a peer to them, just to have that peer-to-peer communication, just because it's more comfortable to be around somebody that understand what you went through. So and one of the things that was been happening for me recently, for when everything changes, was that I started getting phone calls from the people that I mentored. And one of the fears was that would I ever work again? Or would I even be able to afford to pay my rent and stuff like that? So that was a lot of questions that I got. And I had to really, instead of me giving them my opinion, I had to really listen more to really understand and everything. And I really figured out how to help them in a different way. So I got closely more into brainstorming some things with them, to how to help them to make things more easier and make things more common. And that was one of the things that I actually found out, that is a different way that how you can use the gifts that you have. So I started to do some more mentoring, and what I did was I kind of changed the way I was doing stuff too. And recently I helped one of the people that I mentor become self-employed. And the first time they ever did it, they said that they never thought that they could do it. And one of the things that will happen was, our state, we lift some of the stuff that we can do it in the state, like landscaping and stuff like that in Michigan. So him and his cousin and him are living together. His cousin is a support person, and one of the things that he wanted to do, he liked cutting grass, and I was telling him, maybe you should, would it be interesting if you just start cutting grass and become your own business person? He was saying that he always thought about it but never knew how to do it. So I connected with his family, and his support coordinator, but also people that who's close to him in his circle. And his cousin was saying that they can get the truck and all the stuff for it. And the only thing we have to do is just get the certification. So I helped him go online to register his business at an LLC. And now I just talked to him right before I got on the call with you guys. He said he got 45 people to do landscaping for, and he said that one of the best things that he can do is actually pay his own employees. He said that's one of the best things that made him so happy that he wanted to talk to me and tell me thank you. And I told him that we all are here to help each other, and no matter what happens.
That's amazing, and a worthy story, very pertinent to what's happening right now, is that you explained to me, David, when we spoke offline, that your peer mentorship is you're out in Michigan. It's a Medicaid service, reimbursable service. Is that right, David?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's, if you are available to provide this level of support because your state system has planned for that support to be available. Is that right?
Yeah. So and it comes from the person's purchasing planning, and it comes from once they get a certification budget, it comes from the purchasing planning, and the support coordinators will ask them, would you like a peer mentor? And they can say yes or no. And a lot of times they'll say yes, and they have certain goals they want to do for themselves. And I help a couple people do some presentations on presentations to help them start their own public speaking business and stuff. But it's always good to see things happening, especially in a time like this more too.
It's great. Thank you for
Regina,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted to make a comment. I think we're learning a lot of lessons through the COVID-19 experience, and one of them I think is for states that haven't yet created a billable service that is peer support. We're seeing what the potential could have been if that kind of service and trained peers were in place and we're able to deliver services virtually, kind of like we're doing today. The potential that could have had to engage with people and keep them motivated and combat the isolation they're experiencing. So again, that's a lesson about where are we investing our dollars? What kinds of supports are we offering people? And are we missing opportunities on the things that really could make the biggest difference?
Thanks, Lisa. And Lisa, you're not taking the position that a virtual world is a preferred world, that it will supplant employment as we knew it. Are you taking the position that there are things that we will lose, the momentum that we will lose, the gains that are possible by sustaining service provision now where people are?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're being forced now to do something, to figure out how to do this virtual support and service delivery in a way that is going to help us long term. Because I don't think anybody necessarily wants somebody in their face following them around if they don't need that. That would be, to me, that would be annoying and would make me feel like I'm not capable. I would feel much more independent and much more capable if I could just get support when and how I need it. And so I'm not saying we go to a completely virtual world, but I sure hope beyond COVID-19, we don't return to everything has to be face-to-face or we will not pay for it. Because I think we will have missed the biggest lesson that we're learning here. And for supported employment, we know best practice is not getting in people's faces, not inserting yourself in their workplace if you don't have to. And best practice is using technology. And we've got to get away from this culture that the only thing that's real service is if I'm face to face with you doing something.
That's great.
Stigmatizing you.
Ruby, did you have something to add? Ruby, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say that unfortunately, what has come with, decades of a very conventional approach to kind of job coaching and support is sometimes a lot of unwanted stigma or the perception that the person is not as competent as they really are. What I'm curious about, that I'm paying attention to, because when you're stuck at home for months, it's amazing what sorts of things bubble up in your mind. I wake up in the morning, I say to my husband, oh, I had the weirdest dream. He's like, oh, unusual, But ultimately, I think that one of the things we might learn from this, Lisa, is that not only are there a lot more different ways to support people than what has been the traditional models, but also there are a lot more different types of work and ways to define work and ways to access work and ways to support people in making that kind of contribution. And I know people are also being very imaginative about ways to generate revenue and income security that aren't all dependent on only one way of doing that. So I think it can really be a time, a little crucible of creativity about not just automatically going back to stuff that wasn't necessarily all that great to begin with.
Well, you paved the way perfectly for me to throw it to Jennifer White here, who has spent her career trying to innovate using technology with the provision of employment supports. Jennifer, what should we know that we don't already, if we don't, about how technology is being leveraged right now during this crisis?
Well, thank you again for having me. This is such a fun conversation to have. And even though this is, right, the pandemic, and there's crisis and it's hard and there's lots of, hardship for a lot of people, I agree with people that there is real collateral beauty here. There are things happening that tell us that, gosh, there are things we could have had in place for such a long time. And there are things to really pay attention to, and this is bringing it to the forefront. So I'm excited to be talking about these issues. I'm going to actually start right where Ruby left off when she talks about, we've got this stigma of now I've got a job coach too. One of the things that we've been addressing with technology, I'm going to get deeply into that momentarily, is this issue that we have become the surrogate employer on the job site. And one of the reasons that for decades we've poured billions of dollars into how do we better our relationships with employers so they're interested in working with us, and then we drag the same problem into the work floor again and again and again. And that problem is part of that stigma that Ruby's talking about. We're handling the employee, we're managing everything, we're setting the bar, we're the ones making the decisions oftentimes about the accommodations that are even being provided to or experimented with the individual in the workplace. And we all know, when you, like Tia was alluding to, when you have your first job, the relationship with the employer is different than any other relationship before it. And when I'm your surrogate employer, I look like and feel like mom or a teacher no matter what I do, simply because I'm there on the work site with you. So the capacity to build the direct relationship between employer and employee is vital, and technology is one of the ways to do that. And I'm going to, when I think our biggest hurdle also alludes to something Lisa's talking about, where how we've been providing services is based on my relationship with you. In fact, we know that the number one reason people with disabilities lose their job is a change of supervisor. And that tells us something. We're teaching them that it's a capacity model, so you have to buy in that this is a good idea, and you're invested in it, seeing it happen. So you're nursing it to maintain itself within the organization. So instead of building a smart business model that helps you become a natural employee, benefiting the employer in the same way everyone else is. So instead of building it in that light, we're building it as a capacity model. You need time and money to do this special project. It's another separate but equal strategy, right? But the other side of that is also that the employer is now looking at us to set it up. We work on our relationship with the employer to get buy-in, to get in the door. And then we don't want to be a problem in your backyard, so we're going to take care of this person and monitor and coach them. And that fails in the most epic way, because of course, now you don't have a direct relationship with your own employee. We haven't actually built the tools that really support the two of you to connect directly. Oftentimes, and I can't tell you how often I see this, the employee doesn't even really understand the expectations of the job. They go into work and people are smiling at them. They feel good about the work. They feel good about being there. And then they are shocked when they have a sit down with their employer, and they're typically let go. It's not even a, hey, we need to improve this, because the employer doesn't know how to do that. So this is the opportunity. This is the time. These problems are so glaringly, looking at us right now that we have the opportunity to change those strategies. We have invented those strategies. This relationship-based strategy that we use, that Michael, I'm going to use you as an example. I get to know Michael. I get to know what Michael needs. Now I know how to support Michael. And our whole job is based on the fact that I know how to support Michael, instead of what we call, elevating person-centered, I see you, to person-driven. How do I make sure that Michael has the tools in his hand to represent himself without me? Because the turnover rate is exorbitant in our field to boot. So if I work with somebody, maybe somebody who's non-linguistic, somebody who was deemed unemployable, but gosh, we put the right tools in place and they connect money and their employer, and they understand their productivity, and they're working stably for a long time. And then we move out of the country because Ireland is looking good right now. And then they work with somebody else. And now they have to start all over again, because everything was based in my ability to see them and my ability to accommodate them. So person-driven tools that's my passion, as you can tell. And the technology is allowing us to do that in very systematic ways and very structural, successful ways. But onboarding technology is an entirely different animal. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that, if that's okay.
It's okay, but I want to be an instigator with you, Jennifer White.
Rock on, sister.
It's almost, I want to cite Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times for technology.
Yeah.
Before you move on, for those who have technology, how has it revolutionized their participation in a range of employment during the crisis? For those that don't, what are we going to do about that?
Yeah, that's actually what I have here next. So that's perfect. And I made myself some notes because I'm sure you all have guessed already. I'm kind of the segue queen, right? I'm rambling on. So I made a little list for myself, though. I'd cover those points. Thank you, Gina. So I want you to think back like Tia did, when she said your first job. Think about when the iPad and the iPhone came out, right? The impact that it had on your life. Do you remember the world before your phone, when your phone only did one thing? It was a telephone. And think about all the ways that it has changed your life: contacts, organization, tracking, communication. It's the myriad uses of your phone right now. And then do a side-by-side check with the person with the disability that you're serving. Do they have access to it, first of all? And then are they using it the same way? Because what I have seen, we've been teaching technology since the iPad was invented. And what we're watching is we go in, and the person and their employer are on it in a heartbeat. They both get it, they want it, they need it. It makes it successful. But the teams of people who support those individuals don't have the skill set. We're not structurally supported to learn about it. We're not funded to have technology in our workplaces. And then the individual applying for an iPad is a whole nother monstrosity of going through application and denial through several. So it's made it near impossible to actually implement it and integrate it into our system so that we feel that full impact. Because I'm going to actually get back to your point, Gina, because we've been teaching it for a long time. Everybody we serve has an iPad in their hand. There's just two exceptions to that rule, and we had a loaner that we brought to them right away, and we sat car next to car with the windows up, showing them screen by screen how to get on Zoom until they had. So we had the capacity to do that. Our services, like everybody's, right? The pandemic hit and it's hard and there's a lot to adjust to, but we had a full schedule immediately that was filled with self-advocates grouping together and having conversations, doing a stretch and exercise in chairs class, learning about how to use Zoom, learning about how to work technology. We already had things in place. We teach video resumes and have for a very long time. So we're continuing with that because people have access to do that. And some of the messaging that other people are talking about, like, I want to know, I'm returning to work, and most of our folks have been furloughed, and they are keeping in touch with their workforce. So they're making quick videos to send to the frontline staff that are working at the hospital saying, thanks for doing all that great work. I can't wait to get back and support you. Or they're, FaceTiming or Zooming during break time and just saying hello. They're keeping in touch. They're still part of that team. Not only that, but the people who have technology in their hands, of course, we all know, the more computer skill you have, the more you can do in this world period, but especially in the workforce. There really aren't many jobs left unless you want to keep sweeping the floor that don't require some kind of interaction with technology. So the less it is in people's hands, the lower job, the more we keep the job options limited. So I'm going to talk to you about Eric, who uses an app we invented to help capture and track his own production, report directly to his boss. And as soon as we started using the app and we asked him about, actually somebody out in the audience asked him about it when he was presenting and teaching people about it, how do you like using the app? And he said, I love using the app because I can do my job and the job coach can go away, right? And that's what we want for him. But more than that, he teaches all of my new coaches about the app and how to use it because he's using it every day. He is more savvy with how to do it quickly than I do. And because he knows how to do it, his boss can come in and say, oh, we have new supplies. We're not going to use that equipment anymore. And they open it up and they change the pictures without me. They don't have to call me in to do that. Eric can capture the expectations of his boss in a format that he understands it. Then when he runs the app, it tracks it, and then he can send his boss a chart. Now they're having the conversation about production and work expectations that Eric needs to thrive in the work site and to understand his own growth. Now, because he's got so much savvy with the iPad and all of these tools, then we realize, he's running out of supplies. He's stocking all of these drawers for the ICU. He's running out of supplies. Gosh, I bet he could do inventory. Sure enough, he learns numbers in no time. We look at our services in this way. Every time I'm cueing you and basing it on my relationship to understand who you are, I want to ask the question, what can we build so that you can reference it and I don't have to be there? Because the shift to virtual work, like virtual coaching, is this big unknown beast that people are worried about. I agree. I don't want to be on the outside with some magic wand, right? But I want to build the reference tool so that they don't need me. And that's my job, is to be the accommodation, not the surrogate employer. My job is to build the right accommodations. I'm also going to say that technology bleeds right over into the employer. So not just does Eric know how to do it, but we also provide the employer with cost analysis of those positions, because if Eric wasn't doing that job, they'd be paying the warehouse supervisor, and the difference in their pay, and now that person can do other things. Or we support nursing floors. What if the nurses and the RNs or the LPNs and CNAs, we do cost analysis for each of those jobs. So the fluency of our staff providers means that the support is being directed and available to everybody that we work with. And then they're actually also building and accommodating, the two customer model. We're accommodating Eric, but we're also accommodating his boss so that they can continue to have conversations, not just with each other, but the boss can have internal conversations about the importance and value of this. I know I'm rambling, but I'm excited about this. I think that we have the answers, at least some of the answers. Implementation of those answers is being stopped by two enormous barriers. One, we don't have the structures in place to purchase things for people so they can get it in their hands and get trained. And two, we don't have any mandates that say, as a provider, part of my intake is to find out how you're using smart devices and train that. And then as a new staff person, here's part of the orientation. We have had all along this choice to opt out of riding the wave of technology as accommodation. Why? We're actually, our job is to make sure we can provide this. So I think structurally to get those things in place is going to be vital for us to move forward. I have 1,800 more things to say, but I'm going to stop for a minute so Jeannie can ask any question that she wants. Should I keep talking? Keep going?
I think we may have lost Gina temporarily, but I would just comment that I think the sooner we recognize that the way we approach supported employment can revolutionize the way we provide all kinds of supports to people with disabilities, the more we'll move things forward in the right way. What you just described, Jennifer, is exactly the approach that any kind of supports should be taking to empower people, to enable people to learn to do things and take control of their own life. And that's good for everybody. That's good for, they then can make a stronger contribution to their community benefits. They then can have more independence and self-determination, and they benefit. And then the system that's over here trying to make the dollars work they benefit, and more people can get services that can be with the same amount of dollars. So that recipe for success and supported employment is what we need across all services. I hope Gina's back.
I just wanted to say too. Okay, go ahead, David. Go on.
I agree with you on that, and I definitely agree with all that. So my question is, as self-advocates and as allies and different things the things that we see in our community, but also an employment thing, how can we help other people to be at the table? Because that's one of the things that I have been seeing is that when you have employers to hire people with disabilities and everything, I've been through this before. It's hard sometimes when you have to let them know about the disability and stuff like that to really understand, and then you have to show them how the certain things that what your strengths are, and I think sometimes when you explain to them that it's easier for me to show you and be at the table, and that way because I can actually show you more than when then the other person can help me. And I think sometimes what happens is it's that gap between how we can work together instead of somebody just saying, I know what you need, because not everybody knows what everybody needs in life. And I think the person who goes through it is the person who benefits from it. And I think the employer benefits because the communication from both of them makes not only make each other grow, but makes the workers and the company grows too. And I think that builds that gap to people to be more in the community and also to really involve to grow new skills, I think too.
Yeah, David, I think that's a genius insight. And I'm going to call on Michael next because I know he's going to talk about this directly. And this is how we met. But I'm going to make 2 points quickly, Michael, if you don't mind for just a second, just to say that, David, we have a project with a local hospital that we embedded all of these tools and invented some of them in. And they've merged and they're building a whole new hospital that is redesigning how they do all of their supplies. And they reached out to us to say, how can we partner to figure out how many positions and how to build them, because they understand the benefit, because we are a business model and we do have those tools embedded. So we know employers want them. You're absolutely right. And things like a video resume where instead of me talking on somebody's behalf about their skill set, they're showing that from the beginning. And I think part of our solution forward is partnering with employers. Like we wrote a standard operating procedure to help them understand how to work with us, because they don't have standardized relationships with us. They get one thing from me, something else from another agency, something else from the school district. So if we can help them kind of own it without having to become special education teachers and having to understand, right? But that we give them guidance about here's what you can expect, including here's when I'm going to be on site. Here's when Eric feels like he's ready to fade, and I feel like, yes, I agree, he's ready for me to leave, but the employer is going to sign off on it. So they're not surprised by these things that keep injuring our relationships with it. So I think that that's a big piece of it. I also think that, like we're all talking about right now, the difference between the devices, and I'm going to reference mostly iPads because it's what we use, although any surface, smart surface, works the same way. We're now using a tool of the masses. So instead of somebody lugging in a Dynabox at $6,000 that nobody knows how to use, nobody else interacts with one, we have a model that everyone knows how to use. In fact, Eric has gained more skills from watching his peers once he got the iPad in hand. Like you guys, David, you learn more from your peers than you do anyone else. Everybody does. So what happens when peer-to-peer teaching happens? Like Michael's I taught him something that he knows more about than I do because he uses it every day, and he's a better teacher than I am about it because I don't have to use it all day long. So that peer-to-peer support is vital. There's no doubt about it. And training experts up, especially at this time, for goodness sakes, our state, Washington State, did a great job of making sure I don't lose my business if I'm a direct service provider. They've done a beautiful job to make sure that when we all go back to work, you're not having to start with new people. But everybody across the world is struggling with, what about the person who got furloughed and is sitting at home? What are they doing right now? I think this is the time to train people up on, Tia, David, Michael, you're incredible self-advocates. Can I support you to develop your own film so that we, you know what I mean? This is the time to be working together to make that film so that, like, you're very, articulate folks, but Eric, or Reed Zimmer, for example, is non-linguistic, but he can still teach stuff. We help him make film so that he can stay in the lead in the classroom and that kind of thing. So if we can teach technology and get it in more people's hands and train you to be trainers and make sure that we're developing tools that are very visual and follow visual flow, so you have, guides that help anybody, regardless of their cognitive capacity, to onboard about that skill. Rock and roll. I mean, I think we're on our way. So Michael, I know I'm a rambler. I think it's your turn to talk. I'm going to mute myself. Can you tell your stories now and talk about the importance of technology?
Yeah, I would love to. But one of the things I would say is to make a policy shift as an employer, because of this COVID situation, be able to use it. If you have a work computer, which they did bring from my office, to give them permission to do that when they're off work. They might want to send a normal email to family, which is fine. I've got permission to do that, but I'm a state employee, so I had to ask permission to do it because I have a state machine. Now I also have, thanks to a friend of mine, have an iPad and a way of doing it. But I'm thinking of ways to figure out how we could get technology in people's hands. And after 5 o'clock, it doesn't go away, because we can make it easier for people if we make rules that say it's okay to use it after work hours, if we're going to be at home because of this COVID, as long as we're going to be there. That's one thought that I had about it. The other thing is about I sent an email at 2:30 in the morning once to Jennifer. And it sounds like a weird time to send one. Well, first of all, it's the first one I've ever sent that way, because it was the only one I was able to do on my own without, I used the smartphone, an iPhone, that Jennifer told my wife and me that we could use. And I gotta be honest, my first confidence level was, I wasn't sure that I was confident enough to do it. That's one that we gotta build up, is our confidence as a community about using the technology, and to have the faith that we could get there. Forget IEP, forget valuations. It's given some confidence. If you get some confidence, you could do a lot of things. Now I couldn't imagine going without it. It's like the man can, I see the light. It's as simple as writing an email, but I wrote it at 2:30 in the morning. Why? Because I was so excited about having the ability to do it and to say what I wanted to say. I mean, yes, I don't normally write her at 2 in the morning, but it was just like, I woke up and I go, I can say whatever I want. I can go to the grocery store and read whatever I want to say. This is what I want. Push the button, and it reads back to me what I'm going to go get. And then I go down the right aisle, and I don't forget anything because I don't have to remember everything. And Emily doesn't have to go. That's my wife. Say, oh, honey, we forgot the bread. I got to go back because it's on the list. I got it on the list. And so some of the things that I think is important about jobs is the skills are transferable, right? If you can read a thing, if you can do Outlook at home, you could do Outlook at work. You could do different things like that to empower yourself to have a better life. And hopefully someday I have my own business to help people do what they want to achieve, because that's what it's about for me. I hope that answered your question to some degree.
Yeah, can you tell people what you're using? What are you using technology for? Like what kind of apps do help you?
Yeah. I have dyslexia, so I use JAWS. It's a screen reader, and yes, there are more than one, but that's the one I use. And now I use also, and Jennifer, you're better at the name than I am. I have an app on my the iPhone that can just read the text, but I forgot the name of it.
That's okay. There's lots of them out there, but you have
that
screen
this
read.
pushes the button. That this pushes the button. I push the button and it reads the text. Just like it says it out loud to me, and then I'm able to talk it in. I'm able to talk into it as well because I use Dragon, and I also talk into my phone. Without those two things, I'm pretty much in the dark.
And what does Emily, your wife, call Siri, the voice command response, you know, in an iPhone? What does she call it?
My girlfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and that's my wife. I mean, you know, like I talk to her more than I talk to her, right? Yeah. So, is that? I mean, yeah, that was when we first started. When we first started was in the. It's like I didn't know what I was doing, but we got there, and now I wouldn't go anywhere without it.
Great. So I'm just going to finish up around the tech piece by saying when Michael talks about transferable skills, right? Reed Zimmer is a man who is Down syndrome and is deaf and has very minimal language skills. And we started with low tech, but once high tech started, you know, he could capture a video of his new nephew, his brother saying, oh, here's Reed's new nephew, and go into work and play it. Which means the doctor at the urgent care where Reed works pulls his phone out and goes, oh, cool, look, Reed, I went skiing this weekend. And it's forming a kind of natural support that we've never seen before it for folks, regardless of their language skills. And again, we're a YouTube nation, right? Everybody's sharing stories through film. And this is the great equalizer for being able to bond with coworkers or share and interact in some of the same ways. So besides the, here's how I'm tracking my job and reporting and all of that, there's actual connection in the workplace, enriching these relationships. Gina's back.
Hey, Jennifer, you remember that time when we did a national webinar and we got to the topic of technology and my technology failed? That was so fun. I'm back. I apologize. Whatever I missed, Michael, I know it was terrific. So we're back. If anyone would permit me, I think we should flow into next topic. And the top.
Hey, Gina, can I just ask one thing? People are asking questions on the chat, and they're not necessarily, you know, like getting read to everybody. So, just from Jennifer's presentation, for example, someone asked Jennifer, you made reference to an app, and they wanted to know, you know, what app or apps those were. And the other question that came up was, you know, for folks who are living in rural areas, you know, do you have ideas or has there been, you know, specific advocacy around infrastructure or ways of getting technology to people who may be like in a hole, you know, that the internet doesn't work very well, phones don't work very well, and so forth?
Yeah. So we use a lot of native apps on the iPad and iPhone. So iMovie and the camera, we use more than anything else because that's what we use to build video resumes, self-advocacy films, all kinds of other pieces. We was trying not to shamelessly plug the app that we invented, which is called Work Autonomy. That's the one where you can capture and track and report with your boss because it helped us answer it didn't exist when iPads came out, and we went to the App Store and everything's made for a 5-year-old. Everything under accommodation as cartoon characters, and it, you know, it gave us hair, it stood up the hair on the back of our neck. So we created one that addresses what we wanted to do specifically for the workplace. The rural areas piece, this world is forcing us into understanding that there really are answers for it. Now, not to say that there aren't enormous barriers, because who has access to the internet and who has access to tools are an enormous challenge in many areas. We have partnered with library systems libraries are part of our WIOA partnership, right? So we have partnered before we went into this pandemic with librarians who will tell you that most of what they're teaching now is technology to the public, right? The computer systems are used as much as the books in the background. So, that's a good natural partner. But right now, I'm going to give you so there are serious barriers about setting that up, because people without the technology can't go to their library right now. But for everybody who does have access, and we serve 2 people who have to drive and get a ride and sit outside of a McDonald's or a Starbucks to be in service with us right now while there's the pandemic. And there are people that were, again, joining outside their glass doors. Our staff are outside showing their device and they're showing things back and forth. But everyone else, like even making film, a video resume, we're working together. I have it up, I can share my screen. People are assigned to go get pictures and do different things, and then we compile it together virtually. Even though it's much better to be side by side, I'm a people person, and so I like being in people's company, but even me, I've really made this adjustment to understand how to break it down and do it over this kind of medium. It's definitely workable. And like I said, we have a toolbox of things that we use already that we've already invented. But David, what we don't have, and what you so brilliantly brought up is, right, I want to throw out, here's all the tools we have. Can you assess them for how they work for you? And how do we pay a team of self-advocates to build the right toolkit for technology, for self-advocates to be able to get in the forefront of becoming trainers around technology and trainers about anything else that you want using technology, so that the person who's supporting you can fade into the background.
And Jennifer, isn't it the case, shortly before I fell off, I was pressing you on infrastructure. Aren't we having conversations that should continue at a fever pitch about technology as a utility? Yeah. Technology like water and air, water and electricity. Because really, you can have a beautiful app that is an effective and efficient accommodation, but if you don't have broadband, and to one of the commenters in the box, if you don't have broadband, how do you get it? How do you get at it? Yeah. And so, what do we need to be talking about around the country in terms of when other people see broadband in the stimulus package? Don't we need to include that in the list of demands from the disability community right now?
Yeah, I think we have a model for it too. My background is in deafness and deafblindness. I'm part of the deaf and deafblind communities in Seattle, which are very strong grassroots organizations of self-advocates who understand their accommodations and understand how to ask for it and understand how to be political about it and get involved. And so they've been made great strides. In the world of deafness and deafblindness, right, we went right to the providers of all of those services, the phone company. Oh, I'm using a TTY before we had video. I'm using a TTY. It takes longer to type and have a conversation with my long distance, phone call to my parents than it does for you to talk about it. So why my bill is higher than yours, and that's a discrepancy that's based on my disability. So then we started adding a small tax on your phone bills. You used to see for the hearing impaired. And that money was actually going to fund a reduced bill for people who use TTYs as their primary phone. And then we moved into this virtual world where we have email, again, communication, right, through the FCC, who is providing these services and oversight. We have to have conversations with those enormous, large corporations and oversight agencies about how to make this accessible to everybody. Because if people don't have technology in their hands and they don't have access to it, like Michael's talking about, before having access to the voice activation, he couldn't join those conversations, not only with employers and being able to offer more at work and be connected to his coworkers and even read the daily emails. Besides that, being able to join the social media revolution. How do I read the news? How do I get involved in having conversations on a larger scale and learning how I can contribute to those conversations and learn more from those conversations? So the infrastructure is not yet in place and needs to be in place. But I think the deaf and deafblind communities, originally with the phones, to the TTY, and then the FCC projects, deaf-blind people, folks with dual sensory loss, are part of a nationwide project called I Can Connect, where I used to be an evaluator and trainer, where I would meet a deaf-blind person in some rural area. We'd evaluate if an iPad would be helpful, if a Braille note attachment, Braille reader and Braille type would be, we evaluate the equipment needed, order it, and go train it. And that's a federally funded program. So how do we level the playing field is going to take some serious decisions, and you know, we're going to need to sit down with some legislators and have some conversations about how to build this infrastructure, because we're right now robbing Peter to pay Paul to stopgap issues that are long-term problems. And this has to change. This has to elevate. There aren't a lot of high-paid or exceptionally interesting jobs that don't require some kind of technology already. So not just how do I join the conversation and have the same rights that everybody else has because they have access to connect with others, but then how do I upgrade my job opportunities, my career goals, because I'm learning these tools. And like Michael said, I can take it home with me. I can traverse these environments so I have the kind of fluency that's necessary to have that impact.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I think I just wanted to say, I think that's right, that, you know, it's an interesting shift in expectations and what people are learning by seeing people doing, which is why we always want everybody included. But people with disabilities, a lot of times the conversation says, with the right technology, people can access all kinds of work, which is true. But another truth is when people are seen as competently using technology, technological jobs can open up for people. Not just if you have technology, you can get a job, but people with disabilities can do technological jobs. So when you think jobs of the future, and we're trying to shatter the old mythology about, somebody in the chat room said, you know, get rid of the food built in flour, you know, all of that, we've created a whole nother level of stereotypic jobs that are just as bad as food, filth, and flowers, you know, for people with disabilities. So we think forward to future jobs of the future. The fact that people are gaining that facility with a wide range of easily accessed, for the most part, technology, that's opens up all kinds of worlds.
That's the end game, Ruby. That's absolutely the prize. And we're not even prize, that's the rights. That when we get there, then we will have equitability.
So
what is the prize that I came from the rights perspective?
Well, and I think that also speaks to when we're talking about the infrastructure, you know, we have to understand that, like, I teach this stuff and we go in and we have some great story. We teach video resumes, people get jobs, the agency that we're supporting loves it, the employers love it, the employees love it. We finish our project, we come back a year later because they want us to do something else. And that technology has been sitting on a shelf for the last year after we left, because they haven't implemented it into their strategic plan and onboarding and all that kind of stuff. Part of my lesson in this is to really start to remember that people with disabilities are in a marginalized group. And what that means is, just like David said, they're not at the table making the decisions about how this rolls and what the rules should be and how things should be built. And when we look at marginalized groups of people, all the women in the room, how long have we been working on the same dollar as our male counterpart? Why can't we fix it right away? Oh, the rubble of institutionalized marginalization means you need a long-term dynamic plan to fix this. This isn't put iPads in everybody's hands and we're there. This is, we have to continue to march to understand how to change representation and access. We have to keep talking to David and Tia and Michael about how do we get you in the forefront, because you weren't allowed, you know, for goodness sakes, Michael didn't have an iPad. Are you kidding me? How come I've had 10 of them and he's had one, right? Like,
Jennifer, let me ask you something about that though. You during this crisis, you've called me and told me that you've purchased and sent iPads to people yourself. Do we?
I didn't purchase them. I had them here.
You had them. You have them, and you're not the only one. Other providers and other folks who are in this field have told me the same thing. Do we think that's sufficient right now?
Not at all. I mean, we're putting Band-Aids on heart surgery, you guys. This is something that, to stop the bleeding and to put life into this, so that we're really talking about not just let's dream about the future. This isn't George Jetson stuff. This is stuff we have access to right now that is just not getting to the hands. The training is not being implemented. It's not being funded. And let me tell you too, that when you're trying to get somebody an iPad and you have to write to your insurance and get it denied, and then write to Medicaid and then get it denied before you can even move to, that's insanity. There's no way, nobody's going to keep a job or train on a job waiting 9 months to get a piece of accommodation in their hands. So that's, of course, we need funding for technology for all the service providers, because if we're not fluent at it, we're not going to get it to you. We're not going to get you trained, right? We're not going to be able to support you correctly. And people with disabilities, period.
Can I add one thing? I think the other thing about it is that, it's called credit. Like if you go to Best Buy and you go to whatever, we could put it on credit like everybody else in America, but what have we done? We've said people with disabilities can't have money, so you can't save up for something because there's a $2,000 cap, and yes, you got to write an early, a past plan, and I forgot a couple others. Well, everybody else does it by it's called Visa or debit or whatever you call it, but we don't give ourselves any capabilities of building up credit that way, and then we can look at going to Apple Store and say, help me pick out the one I need, because I don't know what's the best software for me to use because I'm a new person with a computer. I think that would be a huge game changer for two things. One, it builds up their credit, which is kind of cool because you need it for a house if you want to buy a house someday. And we think this employment. If I have a computer, I can do anything. It's not just an employment tool. It's a life tool. We don't take our oxygen when we're out of work. I mean, I get really stoked about what their capabilities are, but that's, to me, what it's about is giving the ability to give it to you. And I don't have to ask DVR's permission. I want a computer. I want people to get fired up about what they want out of life, not ask somebody else's permission. I don't think Jennifer asked what somebody like that jacket. She just bought it. It's called capitalism.
That's right. Michael, that's so beautifully put. And every time we've worked with a group of people, we worked with a team in DC where we trained 6 young youth about how to make video resumes, and then they taught the 60 other youth that attended the summer program. Not only we teach by starting with silly films, and so they made all their silly films, and then they made their video resumes. And then one of them said, hey, I want to join this conversation about Black Lives Matter, and made a film about Black Lives Matter. And it is exquisite. And he showed it. It's hard. I can't barely talk about it without crying. If you see it, it's just so well done. And he showed it when we had our big community event where everybody was viewing the video resumes. The students were showing them, and he showed it. And the legal team that owned the building hired him to make film because he is such a good storyteller. So it changes the world in ways that we can't even anticipate, like Michael's talking about. Financial literacy, you know how many apps are visual? They give you a pie chart, it's pretty simplistic. You know, there's ways to understand so many different things. There are more than 2 million apps on the App Store. You can use an app for everything. And like Michael's talking about, my whole life can be addressed by it, but I can also make choices about when to put it down, right? there's that.
That's a good segue. I want to go to Ruby and Lisa and then to Tia and David. And I've got, I think because I've been in and out, I have reserves of questions, but this is directed to Ruby and Lisa. You know, so much of what we are learning right now in real time has to do with our old perceptions of place, of what place meant in the provision of services. And there was a historic attachment to putting people in places as opposed to the provision of services. Can you say a bit more about that, about how you might be you may have already reconceptualized that, but others are just thinking about that now. Can you explain some of that?
I'll start off. I know that, you know, years ago, there was a sociologist named Ivan Illich, and he talked about place, but it meant sort of in the general scheme of how we perceived community. It was like most people had 3, quote, places, and it was really not so much a place, but a way of connecting. So if place was home and work and your faith community, or home and school and your favorite sports team if you're TNLs, it's the way you're connecting. And so that notion that for people with disabilities, we have to create some separate thing for people with disabilities is so far off base. It's what I fondly call becoming the problem you're setting out to address. Because what we're really talking about is not a place at all, but a way of connecting. And I think there's probably a heightened awareness now about that because we're all kind of at home figuring out ways to connect. Now, having said that, I think one of the biggest risks that people with disabilities often face is isolation, you know, physical isolation, social isolation, and the attendant loneliness. And so we have to get our hands around that. When we get all creative about who can work from home, for example, I think we have to be mindful if people have a heightened vulnerability to not being seen and understood for who they are, for not being seen as having gifts, for being set apart, for being isolated, for being lonely. Some of the best, even some of the most popular people I know are still lonely because of the way things are structured for people with disabilities. So I just want to put that out there as an opportunity to, first of all, say, what are we learning in this time? And in part recognize that you learn what you already know. We've known this a long time, and we need to know it better, and we need to know it more urgently, and we need to know it more imaginatively. And there need to be safeguards in our creative imagination process to say, preventive, developmental, and corrective safeguards to say, when our best ideas are becoming the problem they're setting out to address, people need a place to go during the day. Now we've set you aside and you never engage in community. You have no valued social roles. You have no reasonable income. We structured you into poverty and stigma. Yay, and for this, Medicaid is paying. So I want us to be, I want us to be imaginative, and I also want us to be thoughtful about the continued discrepancy. Jennifer was saying, you know, people want one iPad, and I have, you know, 10 and they have none. You know, when I ran an employment agency, one of the things I used to do with my staff every once in a while when we started getting people giving us honors and awards and telling us how great we were, I'd say, take out a piece of paper. They'd take out a piece of paper, and I'd say, I want you to write on one side of the paper all of the benefits accrued to you because you have people with disabilities in your life that you're assisting with their careers. It would be this big long list. Then I'd say, pick your favorite person and somebody that we think we've served really well. And I want you to write on the other side of the page all of the benefits that have been accrued to that person because they're in relationship with you and us. And it was always shorter. And so I think being mindful about that to say, what's culturally typical minus the congregation, segregation, stigma, and social devaluation part, and how in our best endeavors, whether it's getting everybody back into the workforce after this, you know, during this COVID thing and afterwards, or whether it's saying, let's right some wrongs about some ways we're just absolutely wrong about what people want and need who have disabilities. But let's, you know, be really imaginative and seize this moment to say, we don't have to go back to the old ways.
So I'll just chime in and say, the saddest thing I've seen, I guess, is that the first efforts to preserve provider capacity through COVID-19 were directed to facility-based programs. Were directed to keeping those separate places open. And we did not see the response that we had hoped for, that the providers delivering those flexible, individualized services that support people to be in the places where everyone else is, they were kind of not addressed. And so I know we're coming around to it, but I still think that one of the major barriers we face is our own assumptions about what people are capable of. And we let ourselves say, and I saw it in the chat box, I'll admit it, that this can't work for some people, or this can't work for people. And then when you say, show me where it's been done well and it hasn't worked for this person, before you say this person, it won't work for this person, we often don't see it hasn't been tried. It's based on assumptions that people are making that's not fair to make. If we really believe that if we support people well and use technology well and use things like systematic instruction and all we know about building community, that if we put all that together, that people can lead their own lives and do not need someone as a caretaker with them in most cases, we can move people forward. But if we keep saying we know without even trying that it won't work, we will never try. And we will never try in a way where we intend to succeed. And I worry a lot about that because I think that we have to be careful that we aren't, as Ruby said, we aren't kind of part of the problem, part of why things aren't moving forward.
I just want to say one thing about that, Lisa, too, because when we're talking about marginalization, I saw this a question in the chat box of how do I get technology in somebody's hands before they get to the job, right? Because I didn't have to wait to learn how to use a computer before I got to work, right? I've had access to that all along. And so again, when we're looking at structural solutions, we're not right currently, VR will buy you an iPad if you've been employed, if it's connected to a job. But really, when you're talking about marginalization, people don't have access to these skills and these tools that it looks like magic all of a sudden when they can do something simply because the accommodation wasn't in place.
I want to see if David earlier for a bit was trying to make a comment. I don't know if he could get in. Did you have a comment, David?
The only thing that I was curious is to Jennifer is how, because I'm definitely curious on how, as self-advocates, how we really can open that door up to train other like peers or other advocates to really use the not just the gift, but the new stuff that comes up every time. And I think for like the employment, but also like the technology part, how we can really open that door up a lot more, and just seeing how is it a way that we can really tap into something that I think we have, but I don't think we really kick the door down more, I think.
So there's David, that reminded me, Disability Cocoon, who does a lot of work around technology, they're actually starting up a certification for people to learn, really get really knowledgeable about all the ways technology can be used. Because I think they're finding that the technology is there, but the people who are assisting folks to figure it out don't have the knowledge themselves. So I'm excited to see where that goes, because I think we would, again, going back to my comment about if we don't believe it's possible, well, if we have more education about how technology works and what it can do, then it'll start shaping our attitudes. And peer support, I absolutely agree with you. You all should know all that too, so that you can help people see what is possible for them.
Which, Lisa, you know, Tia's been doing some revolutionary, or I would call community organizing through the internet. And Tia, what has surprised you about the great turnout that you've gotten every week during this crisis? Hundreds of people join you online in self-advocacy and peer mentoring and support for each other. Can you what parts of that might have been surprising?
I think that it's given people a chance to just talk about what they want to talk about. It's part of it is talking about how are you feeling, and people have been very creative of supporting each other on there. I think that that's really great. They've been getting on Zoom, which some of them never gotten on the computer before. They've learned how to get onto Zoom now. We're worried about having people register because of all the, we had an incident on the Zoom bombing kind of thing that happened. But we now had people are able to get on. Even if they had to register, you only have to register one time and you get the password. So people have been doing that, and we would set up the staff to watch each screen that's on there, so that if something were to come up, we're automatically there to take it off right away. And Zoom has been improving more and more every day, coming out with more security ways so that tries not to happen. The other part I want to do about technology is I'm hoping that technology is wonderful, but it doesn't take the place of people being involved. It shouldn't be taking the place of people seeing and being involved and being in the community and working. We don't want to push that so much so that happens. The other parts are like during this crisis, people were talking about they might get more money, like from DD councils or other places. And I suggested, why don't you get people iPads then? If you're getting extra money, what could happen during this time? That would be great. Getting that technology in their hands. The libraries, just a note, a side note for all that. People say, well, people could just go to the library. Well, those librarians don't know how to use the computer. You cannot stay on there for long amounts of times. Most of them have time limits that you can use those computers there. So that always doesn't work either. You know, and I think that, I mean, I love technology just as much as everybody else, but it also could be a barrier to having that interaction with and socializing with people and talking about loneliness. You know, we don't want to bury that and make that everything done on technology and nothing in person anymore, and nobody interacting with people anymore. It's a real serious problem. Even people that are on 50 million Zoom calls right now, people with disabilities, we're always checking in to see, are you at least going outside to walk around your building? What are you doing to get at least some fresh air, to interact besides sitting at home? Because loneliness could cause people to do all kinds of things. Feel very lonely can actually cause people to end their lives. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, but people need people, and people need to see each other and interact with each other, not just by computer, not just by that. They need people. And let's not all forget about not just talking about jobs, but let's talk about careers.
Yes.
Getting people a career, you know, thinking beyond jobs.
Yes.
Right.
Amen to you.
I'm part of the Yes Dinner, which is it's a youth employment center that we've got a grant from ACL, and part of my job is the career development committee, and we're looking at hopefully doing, you know, at least the first part is a manual to talk about what kind of things that people with disabilities are interested in. How would you like to learn about how to get a career? And putting that together, and then for all of us technology junkies, hopefully an app that comes together that they can use on their iPad as a road to their career, where the career is up on top, and having people go through steps. And I don't know how much it costs to do an app. I've never done it before, but I'm trying to figure out who to work with, who to partner with to make that available. Thank you, Jennifer. But to have, like, here's your first step, and there's a celebration after each step. Something
Amen.
that comes up when you interact with that. Like, you know, first you have to think about what kind of job or career you want. And after you do that and you just say it to somebody, some kind of celebration to keep people motivated. At the end, is the very end, is hopefully you get your career, and then you do a big celebration. All those people who have supported you, you get together with them and celebrate the the career that you have now. And to make that happen and to tell stories about all of us who are fortunate enough to have a career, and share our experiences with them, about what was it like when we were thinking about having a career and things like that. And I know most people on the phone are thinking, well, these people here that are talking with disabilities are more advanced than the people that we work with. We always get that because we are leaders, but you didn't know us when we first started self-advocacy, what our lives were like. We had to have somebody who believed in us and who was there rooting for us and who said, you can do it, and given us that confidence and self-esteem to be able to do some of the things that we're doing today. Just because we are the leaders that we are now, it's because of the resources and the people out there who supported and loved us and believed in us to give us those opportunities and those chances and those resources in our hands, which you described so beautifully, Jennifer, to make those things happen, to believe that. If you believe that, you would be amazed if you give that. Part one of self-advocacy is giving everybody the self-esteem that they need.
Amen.
They have the self-esteem that they need. That's part one. That's a big barrier you're over right there, because they can't learn anything else until they feel good about themselves. And they need people behind them telling them that they can do these things and they can make a difference.
I just, if it's okay, if I could just say amen. I mean, because I don't, that you said it all.
You agree entirely, Michael, it sounds like.
Yeah, 100% or 1,000%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, today's conversation, Ruby. I'll let you say what you're saying right now, but I'm also turning it to you. That everyone's talking about a model of employment that seems flexible, available, portable, technological, driven by a person's interests, wants, and needs. Are we looking and living in the future? Is this a future-oriented conversation?
Well, absolutely. But let me say that everything that we're talking about exists somewhere already. And, the age-old problem in our field often is bringing a good idea, quote, to scale, or helping people to know that it exists, or to show what I call the rival image. You believe this is how it's going to be, but here's a different picture than the one you're picturing. And it may be, as Tia was saying, the picture is how Tia looks when she's surrounded by the right mirrors, when the people around her say, I see you, and they really see her. And sometimes it means loaning your confidence to the person as well, because sometimes people will say, I'm not ready, or I can't do that, because it's so internalized from people giving that message that isn't true. They've got the wrong mirrors around them, reflecting back something that really isn't truly them. But it is forward thinking in the sense that we would have to deal with long-standing old habits, would have to deal with capacity building to do things competently as opposed to the way, they've been done for a long time. Would have to be clear that there really is a bold national agenda to increase real employment, competitive integrated employment for people with disabilities. Would have to include our partners, the usual partners, some not usual partners, clearly employers. Let's talk about employers as if there's some, like we're part of the Peace Corps and we have to go into alien territory and try to strike up a conversation with people who speak a different language and have some other set of norms that we don't understand. And people are people. I mean, we're talking about pull people in. The relationship is between the employer and the potential employee, and both have something to contribute to the conversation. I'm very excited about it because every single thing that we mentioned today does exist, can exist, is possible, but we're operating in a political context where there are also forces to keep everything the same. And there are forces that are based on fears and myths that are not helpful or true, but they do exist. And they're very powerful forces to not have things change. And I think, you know, fear-based mythology holds a lot of people back. So part of our job, and David was addressing it, Tia was addressing it, I think everybody as part of our various presentations talked about how do we engage people in a conversation like this? How do we educate people about what's possible? How do we answer the questions that people with disabilities, family members, and others, including employers, coworkers, and so forth, have? And how do we take things that don't turn out to be true and make sure people understand they're not true? How do we take we need to take low expectations and say, everybody, going back to the first thing I said when we started, people really do have gifts. That isn't some fanciful notion. As I like to say, given my faith, you know, God doesn't make mistakes. So we all do have something to contribute, and discovering that is a blast. So I love that Tia's we're all doing the work that we're doing, because we clearly understand how cool it is to be able to meet people and go, I know you're in there. I know you can sparkle and shine. I know we can liberate your personality. Maybe it'll take some confidence building. Maybe it'll take some self-esteem. Maybe it'll take some opportunities you haven't had. Maybe it'll take technology, but you're in there. You're in there. And as a culture, we're going to have to grapple with the notion that we can't just throw certain people away.
Right, right, right on.
What say you, Lisa Mills?
What say I? I was just going to say we need a rival image of what good supports can look like. We need, you know, we need the rival image of who that person is, and then we need the rival image of what we should be paying for on behalf of that person. We have for so long lived with extremely low expectations and spent money keeping people dependent and keeping people constrained and confined. And we have to get away from that the job of that we are just caring for and supervising people who have nothing to offer this world. That is so wrong and such a waste of everything. The people, our work, all the dollars. We have to have a rival image of what good supports look like, and what happens when you invest in people's potential versus you know, this care and supervision model, which is really based on assuming people have nothing to offer.
And Lisa, as follow-up to that, you're talking, I assume you're talking principally about the multi-billion-dollar Medicaid-funded system, which you know fairly expertly. The current moment raises the question about other federal dollars that are being expended. Nearly $60 billion was expended on small business loan in the stimulus package. And as you and I both know, that there is people with disabilities are disproportionately not at all included in small business enterprise. In fact, they're not included in the Small Business Administration's 8A programs. They're very rarely considered to be part of the Community Reinvestment Act activities, which, you know, many billions of dollars have now been committed to community development activities, community development, financial institutions. What do we need to do to marshal the conversation towards economic inclusion and not just benefits?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's a dramatic lack of awareness of what we are missing as a society by not having folks with disabilities be full contributing members of our communities and our economy. And so that is how it always seems to get missed. Despite all the advocacy that all the disability organizations put together, why is it constantly set aside? And I think it's because there isn't a fundamental recognition that our economy would be stronger and our country would be stronger if folks were fully involved and participating. And so we have to change the narrative in terms of what it means to be a person with a disability in America, because it is still largely associated with disability means can't work. It's
Right.
fundamental in our culture. And people are told they can't work, and then they're told they shouldn't work. And you know, so there's a lot of work to do in terms of just getting society to recognize that disability does not mean that and should not mean that. So.
And
I just want to
the
chime
other thing that's interesting to me is that we're told, okay, you have a job, but you don't want to get better. Well, everybody, when you retire, you got to pay for medical coverage. So it's based on how much you make when you're able to do that when you get a pension when you retire, but they don't want to look at you getting an upgrade, a class justification. I just moved from my class to a different class, and I'm making more now than I've ever made. But it's not because I was there for 20 years to doing the same thing. It's kind of like we have to think about it longer term than that, I think.
That's a really good insight, Michael. And I just want to note too, when you talk about what we always hear is, well, that's not the kind of person I serve. I serve somebody with behavior issues. I have all that's my people. That's my tribe. That's who I've been working with my whole life. That's who informed all the inventions that I've come up with. And that's actually, this is a time when with technology, we could be having a social media campaign where we're collecting clips from everybody and storing social media with different images and different stories. And we could partner with all our high school technology clubs and all kinds of stuff because they know how to make it like this. There are ways for us to be doing that right now because that low expectation that Lisa's describing is, in the myth that we're talking about, that is the biggest barrier. That to move that, and we use media because I see it, so be it. If I can see it happening, it's easier for me to integrate it into my belief system. So revolution, people.
I think that
So go ahead, Tia.
also, I just want to share two other things. The first thing is my VR counselor told me that because my parents couldn't afford college and I didn't want to work at a sheltered workshop, that I should sit at home and collect SSDI. That's another image of what people are still being treated like and seen as. And the second part that I wanted to say is that some of the things that are out there that are happening for people with disabilities now are improving some things, but we still have a long way to go. Yeah. I think college is wonderful, but still some of those colleges aren't doing what college students do. Some of them are still doing, and I know life training is very important still for skills for people to have, but that's not all you go to college for. And if you can't, and if it's still out there, if you can't pass the SAT, ACT testing, that's there. There's not many schools that accept you. And I'm just really lucky that now for the first time, I'm getting to go to college at Syracuse University. And they didn't have an online course, but I advocated to them and asked them if they'd be willing to accept somebody who is far in a distance to do online, that we can help each other learn how to do that. Well, now since the pandemic, everybody's online.
Everyone is doing it.
So and college is online. So they have to learn now using these tools that are out there. But, you know, and one of the things that my teacher had said is she got asked the question, oh my gosh, how are your inclusive youth students going to do this? Are they going to be okay? Because there's people with disabilities in the class. And she said, well, we have somebody who already is online and we're working with them to go through the class to get a certificate in disability studies. And they said, and we're finding creative ways to work together and learn how to work with each other to do it online. And so now we kind of have a little bit of a heads up on how to interact.
Yeah, you're paving the way.
It can be done, and it's so exciting that now if more and more people are learning how to do this and including more people with disabilities, then more people can go to school. And that's just amazing to me that we'll
That's awesome.
all be able to go to college if we want to go to college. Well, we can all have a job and a career if we want to do that. We just need the right resources and the people to support us and be able to do that. And nobody's independent. We're all interdependent. Everybody needs supports once in a while. So I think that that's what we have to also talk to people about. That nobody's ever going to be independent anyway. So why keep teaching that?
Yes, yes. This panel has been so wonderful. I wanted to save 5 minutes for our audience who've been very active in the chat room. I wanted to see if there were questions that we didn't address that we could. We could obviously go, you guys know we could go on all day and all night, but we should open it up to questions. I don't know if Donald, if you've seen questions we should have answered.
Kristen asks, I am a job coach. I find myself at odds with my agency's managers and DSPs who are well-meaning, but who undermine individuals' independence and personal responsibilities with regard to work. Individuals become dependent upon staff when they really don't need to be, and it becomes the norm. Any advice?
Write a book.
Take film.
Change how do you know, what really needs to happen is they have to change what they're paying for. They're paying for time. So there's very little incentive for anybody to help people be more independent. If they start paying for outcomes, like paying for how many hours that person works without regard to how much support they receive, it's amazing what you'll see in terms of being able to support people to achieve their full independence. It really is, unfortunately, about the payment structure that continues to just reward keeping people dependent and keeping them needy and not giving them the same opportunities as everybody else.
And it's allowable through Medicaid funding. Everything that we've suggested is allowable. It's just a matter of people having the knowledge and the leadership to go for it, to say there's a better way to do this that is remarkably similar to how we all got our jobs, as opposed to the weird things we create for people with disability.
Right. And if there's any way possible to work with the individual to make a self-advocacy film or even capture clips of what's actually possible, it's a good way to bring it to other people and funding sources to say, look, this is what's possible, so that technology can be purchased or strategies can be changed.
I was also going to say, teach self-advocacy skills to people with disabilities that you serve, because they're the best voice. Have them go to your employer and advocate for that. Have people go with you to that and talk about why it's important to and what they want. I think that this is where we can help people help each other. It's not only their responsibility to make the change, it's also our responsibility to make the change, to speak up and advocate for what we want also.
You have another question, Donald?
Yeah, Anthony asks, she says that many jobs and supports have to be provided on site to be effective, and she asks what hazard pay is available, what have state VR agencies and DD state agencies done to provide hazard pay, what funding streams from the federal government can be tapped for hazard pay, etc. Which state agencies have been on the front line of hazard pay?
Lisa would probably best bet here. Lisa?
So there's a great brief that was put out that looked at like 12 or 15 different states who have gotten these flexibilities approved and what they have done. And so I don't know if TASH can post that as a follow-up to the webinar, because then you can look. States can ask for flexibilities to provide what they're calling hazard pay. And I think that we need to think about how does that apply to employment services. So it can be done. But I will say that, you know, we can provide supports to people in ways that aren't necessarily about someone standing next to me all the time. We need to have a planful way to do that. We need a full knowledge of all the options. We need to know all the best practices. But then for each person, an individual plan can be done that can give people more independence.
You know, we always say that, you know, sometimes a crisis is sort of the mother of invention. And I remember when I was running an employment agency, and a woman who had fairly significant multiple disabilities and was deaf and blind, this was her first job and so forth. Anyway, she got dropped off for work during this blizzard. And it was one of these things where
Alexa, turn off.
Nobody could get to her, but she got to work. So first of all, she's like perceived as like employee of the month. But the other thing that happened was the coworkers became very imaginative about how to be with her on that job when the job coach couldn't get there. And so it was one of those things that caused us, you know, no small amount of embarrassment, but we did come back and rethought our process. It was back in the 80s, you know, so yeah, we were still learning things about coworker support, but we sat with the employer and said, we've been making some assumptions that we need to be here in a certain way, doing things in a particular way in order to facilitate this relationship between you and the employee. And it turns out that some of those assumptions are just patently like untrue.
Wrong.
And so can we work together, because you know the job, you know her now, you know the culture. Let's see what, if anything, you actually need from us, because we don't want to come in and supplant what otherwise could just be what coworkers would naturally do. Or maybe there's a sort of augmented coworker support, but you know, maybe something we can teach you systematic instruction, for example. But it didn't need to be somebody hanging at their elbow, at the person's elbow, you know, stigmatizing them every day.
Sylvia asks, my son and I are currently watching. He is 19 and is just coming out of a project search program and is set to enter the job market part-time in addition to volunteering. What are some supports that are typical?
Any of you should, all of the panelists probably have a response.
Well, my question, first of all, to him is, what do you want to do? I mean, let's break it down real simple. What do you want to do? Not just somebody finding me a job. I think we made a small error in saying, well, what do you want to do? A friend of mine that I'm looking at right now is a lawyer. All right, she decided to become a lawyer. We make the decision. What do you want to do? I wanted to work for the Mariners, and so we figured a way to do that. But I mean, I would ask you at 18, what do you want to do? And then that's where you start, and then you go from there. And you might have to take small steps. A job is a job to get built up, but you got to go where you want to go. I mean, a long term is just get a job that you want to have.
Yeah. And I'm going to say on top of that, make a video resume now, showing all your skills and transferable skills, and start meeting with employers and showing them that. And connect money to production. You understand what you're making and what that's going to do for you, and what different kinds of jobs, so that when you're talking about making an informed choice about what do I want to do, I have all the information about how that's going to impact me in my future.
And then be able to,
go ahead, Tia.
Be able to talk about all the things that you can do. What can you offer somebody that, you know, might be looking to hire somebody with a disability? Think about all those things that you can do. Get a business card.
Yeah,
they're cheap. You could go on, you know, the cheapest one and like they're like 500 business cards for like really cheap, $10 or $15. You know, people don't always remember who you are. So you can have that opportunity to say, here's who I am, you know, a business card, and on the back, you know, something that you're interested in working with them on, so that they have that in their hand. They have the business card, because a lot of people go by, oh, do you have a business card? Professionals ask that all the time. Where's your business card? Do you have a business card? Just doing that, presenting at different conferences out there that are where a lot of people go to, that you can do a workshop on something that you're good at, because people go to those workshops, and then you can hand out your business card there and talk more about the things that you're interested in and you want to work with.
Also think about the companies that are, you know, nearby you or that you think you might want to work. Sometimes you can get a job tour. They'll take you through and show you the company. Most people are really proud of their companies and they want to show you what's going on. But one of the things you can do when you're going through is you could picture some unmet needs they might have. Like you could picture, oh, you know, it would be great if they had somebody doing this, that nobody's doing that now. And you could make that part of your discussion when you're showing them through your video resume. I know how to do these things. And when I toured your company, it looked like you could really use somebody doing that. The other thing is everything's relationships. You know, I used to ask everybody I knew, just write down 100 people you know, where they work, and how you know them. And I never used those contacts without telling the person, but I never made a call. I ran an employment agency for 16 years. I've been getting jobs for people for now over 40 years. I've never made a cold call, because why would you do that? You know, there's some way within a few degrees of separation, somebody you know knows somebody who works there, or, you know, you can get that introduction made. You're far more likely to wind up working where you want to work if you network like everybody else networks. And even people who say they don't know anybody, know people. And they know people who know people, and you can draw that little relationship map. That's a great thing to do while you're home and bored. Say, who do we know and who do they know, and do a big relationship map, and where do they work, and how can we get in there to talk to somebody about the possibility of employment there.
You could do a path around just work. Invite all those people, your friends and everybody that you know, and talk to them about what you're passionate about. And they could come up with ideas, just like Ruby said, that you might not even thought of. And the person could interact with that. And then they could say, here's what I'll help you with. Maybe somebody's really good at helping write a resume or do a video resume. They can volunteer to help you with that part. Maybe someone knows somebody that can help you do your business card, so they know how to help you get a business card. They can help you with that part, but all that in there is that could be used around as support. And then you never know, that might be somebody who's sitting in that path or that circle of support that you have around the person that could say, I know somebody who does that kind of work. Why don't I talk to them about if they're hiring, or how do I introduce you to them to help you, you know, be interested in a job there, or things like that. You know, and do some job shadowing, so that in case you don't know what you want to do right now, and you're just getting out of the school and project search, maybe you don't have any ideas, but think about things that you might be interested in, and ask if you can do some job shadowing and look at those things that are important that you might want to. And maybe after you do the job shadowing, maybe you thought, well, God, I don't want to do this now. Good thing I didn't go for it, right? Or maybe then you do want to do that. And gosh, I'm really glad that I saw all the different things that this organization or this company or this place of employment does. And I really want to go for it in this, you know, to get a job there.
So I think that we've concluded the amount of time that we allotted for the webinar. I'm most certain the conversation is not going to end. It'll keep on. And I would welcome, it seems that we had quite a number of people join us today, about over 100. I would welcome all of them to be in touch with the panelists and with TASH. And I just want to say thank you to TASH on behalf of all of us. TASH has been a tremendous leader during this crisis. everything from self-advocacy to putting out most current information, to talking to members of Congress, to shaping and influencing the stimulus packages on behalf of people with disabilities around the country. I think we should always support TASH, and nobody asked me to do this, I swear. I plan to support TASH. Folks on the phone should be welcome to find TASH's website and give to TASH so that they can use those resources to continue the vital advocacy that they're doing right now during this crisis. I am so impressed by all that has been going on through TASH, including the self-advocacy meetups. So thank you to this group, and hopefully folks will be in touch with us if they have any questions about today.
Thank you.
Thanks for facilitating, Gina, pulling us all together, and thank you, Donald.
Jennifer, we need to talk.
We do. We have to talk for sure.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.